Well, our next guest, speaking of social media, very active on social media on this topic, Antonio French, Alderman for the 21st Ward in the city of St. Louis. I want to back up for just a second to what we opened the show with, and what got a lot of people's attention this week was your fellow Alderman, Jeffrey Boyd, and his passionate plea. Your reaction to that, what did you make of either the reaction to it or the words he said?
You know, so I understand Alderman Boyd's frustration. I share his frustration, and you know, especially at that moment when he lost a family member, I understand his anger and frustration. I disagree a bit with the sentiment. There's always an audience for the idea that poor communities need to lift themselves up by their bootstraps, that these people need to just stop killing each other, which, by the way, both lumps victim and perpetrator in the same group. And I think what we've seen is that the conditions in these communities have created this situation, and that violence is a symptom of a greater problem that exists and has been allowed to fester in these neighborhoods for decades. And so, yes, we want 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds not to have guns, not to shoot each other, but they didn't create that situation. It is our fault that we have created these neighborhoods where these young people have easy access to guns, have no opportunities for jobs, and the only economic opportunities they have is through illegal activity, at least in their minds. And so we need to do a better job as a city by changing the quality of life in those communities, and I think violence will go down as a result of that investment.
You told the Riverfront Times, we don't hold white victims responsible for their perpetrators. Never do we say the loft dwellers need to step up and make their streets safer. Double standard. It
is very frustrating as a North St. Louis resident that we have repeatedly said we need resources. We need a different kind of policing. We need the same attention as more affluent neighborhoods. And the response is, you guys just need to somehow do it yourselves. And we don't have the resources. We are taxpayers. We pay into the pot, and we expect to be represented just like anyone else. And so a few years ago, Chief Johnson redrew the districts of the city. And North Patrol, I think, got severely undermanned. And so I think what we're seeing 6 months, 12 months, 18 months later is a result of a policing change that has negatively affected these neighborhoods. And as a response, we do this hotspot policing thing. What we really need to do is identify, and this is where Rick and I agree, is that there are some neighborhoods that over the last decade have seen high crime. These neighborhoods have also seen high rate of vacancy, high rate of depopulation, high rate of unemployment. And those need to be the target neighborhoods for the city to change the quality of life in those communities, and violence for the overall city will go down if we make that investment.
50% of the crime and 5% of the blocks, I think you said. That's right. Stark. That's not something I think a lot of people would.
But it also shows that it is a challenge that we can meet. So we know where it's occurring, and that we still have not made the necessary investment in those areas. Bringing crime down by 50% in those 5% of the areas will lower the city's crime by 30 or 40%. So that is where the fight is, and that's where we need to be making investments.
Of course, the mayor and the chief have asked for, I believe, 160 new officers. The Board of Aldermen, your chamber there, has not come up with the funding. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah.
Without going into a whole...
Sure, that's a bit disingenuous, number one. Number one is that over the last 2 years, both the mayor and the chief have lowered the number of police officers. When they started doing that, many of us asked the question, are you sure you want to do that? What we were told is that we're doing different police techniques. We are relying now on the hotspot policing technique. We don't need as many officers on the street. And so 2 years later, when we have reduced the number of police and violence has shot through the roof, the mayor comes and says he wants 160 new officers, but doesn't give us a way to pay for it. And so if it costs us an additional $8 million a year, we have to figure out where to get that money from. And so it's a quick way to put the responsibility on somebody else. Number one, by saying I want this thing that I have no idea how to pay for. And number two, knowing that even if we pass that today, those officers wouldn't hit the ground or the streets for another year or year and a half. They have to go through training. So we need immediate results. And we also need a plan for what we're going to do with the existing police resources, police officers, and what we would do with additional resources.
Let's pause for 1 second.